Chers auditeurs,
Dear listeners,
bonjour.
welcome in Comme d'Archi Podcast Season 4
Saison 4, dans le monde fascinant des architectes.
and in the architectural projects.
Je suis Anne-Charlotte Deponte, passionnée d'architecture et docteur des universités en histoire de l'archi.
I am one of the spokespersons of Anne-Charlotte, who is a PhD in architecture history.
Merci
Thank you
d'être avec moi aujourd'hui.
to be with us today.
Et
And
maintenant,
now,
lundi en français, place au talent.
and Wednesday, let's talk projects. In English, of course.
Bienvenue dans Comme d'Archi.
Dear listeners, good morning. This is Esther on behalf of Anne-Charlotte. It's good to meet you again in Season 4 of Comme d'Archi, Episode 16. Dear listeners from all over the world, today we are going to tell you about an exceptional building, which has just been delivered. It is being published a lot in the French press at the moment. It is built very close to Paris, in the park of the famous and great veterinary school of the city of Maison-Alfort. The client is emblematic since it is the famous French National Forestry Office, ONF. This organization manages the French public forest and wanted a new head office in the image of its role, which today is essential for the French territory. Indeed, it is a unique manager of the forestry regime. It is at the service of sustainable, multifunctional management and renewal of public forests in the face of the challenges of climate change. Because yes, in Little France, there is a dense forest that must be well looked after if we want to feed future generations with its benefits in a sustainable way. Far from the outdated and obsolete image that the French administration has conveyed, entangled in the cogs and other meanders that it has itself generated, today the ONF is also at the heart of the performance and excellence of the wood industry, of its development. It defines itself by extension as an organization that serves employment, the economy, and carbon neutrality. It is an establishment that contributes to societal, environmental, and territorial objectives and whose action resonates well beyond the forestry edge. It is a public institution that challenges itself and claims performance. Its economic model has been restored and its competences have been strengthened. In short, it is evolving with the times and is now working to maintain a permanent dialogue with the living world, a dialogue of quality with increased efficiency. The history of its new headquarters embodies this dimension. This story began with the choice of a team of young, outsider, but performing architects filled with the desire to help the world change for the better. An organic youth flooded by a sap that makes its heart beat strong, a youth that wants to live. And the youth embodied here by Samuel Poutoux and Vincent Lavergne and their teams, young but sufficiently mature to avoid the pitfalls of ardor, idealism, or a radicalism that can only be theoretical. Not that the other talented agencies pre-selected during the competition did not claim laudable intentions, such as Chartier d'Alix or L'Oceanima or one of the biggest agencies in Brazil, Triptyque. No. The added value of Atelier WOA and VLAU, Vincent Lavergne Architecture Urbanisme, both brought together for the occasion, was undoubtedly their expertise in the field of wood combined with their urban expertise. All of which was complemented by an extraordinary ability to listen, which was expressed during the competitive dialogue under the public procurement procedure that was put in place. A global performance contract known as a design and build. In this case, it is the family firm Hervé, since bought by the Fiducim City CG Group, which is the representative and is committed to the grouping. Vincent Lavergne looks back on this architectural association. When we work together with Atelier WOA, we have a special foresight on all the issues of our discipline, from the urban party to the resolution of the constructive devices. Together, we are able to achieve a universalist dimension that gives meaning to our practice. He continues, here we are in a dynamic of reappropriation of architectural and urban issues. Today, concrete is changing its image. Of course, it is the material that symbolizes modernity in the 20th century, but in France, at the moment, concrete is considered to be at the end of its cycle, polluting, consuming a lot of resources, and destroying the environment. Wood, on the other hand, allows us to work on its intrinsic and prolific organic dimension for architecture, respectful of the environment by using relatively local renewable resources. And the fact that it is ONF wood that is used is also a very stimulating parameter. In the case of the project, we have the impression that we are resembling a form of organization that speaks of the state of the art, the industrial state of the discipline. This project crosses a lot of things. End of quote. Let's now talk about the architecture of the ONF headquarters, which can be summed up as follows. A city park dialectic, a scenographic entrance, an allegory of the forest path, a large wooden cantilever. Samuel Poutoux continues on the subject. The architectural approach we have developed is based on an observation. From the tower in which the ONF teams were installed, we said to ourselves that we really needed to do the opposite, to have a horizontal articulation rather than a vertical and compartmentalized one. Then, on the Maison Alfort site, we are going to be able to knock down the surrounding wall, a strong symbolic gesture, and a double opportunity. On the one hand, the site of the veterinary school with its wooded park, which can be reopened to the city, recreating this link between city and park, park and city. And on the other hand, had to bring about the transition of the working methods of the ONF agents in a delicate way, because not everyone is ready to change their habits to leave their individual office. We therefore propose spaces that allow people to continue working in the same way as before, for those who want to keep this way of working, but also spaces that introduce new ways of working, in a more collaborative way, larger spaces. We divide them up according to the site, the context. One wing of the building has a large linear layout on the street, which makes it easy to have a building that can be divided, partitioned as desired for small offices. And on the park, we propose more open spaces in connection with the trees. This element is fundamental. We are talking about the ONF. The figure of the tree, its being, embodies the Office National des Forêts. Finally, these two wings of the building are linked by this large central space that we have called the interior street. It connects the two wings and creates a very simple spatial device that will allow you to find your way around the building, where all the traffic ultimately converges and leads back to this place. Vincent Lavergne continues the development. In this alley that crosses the building, there is also a structuring urban dimension. It is the spatial backbone of the building. From the entrance and from this large central passage, we wanted to create a reading of the building intended for very simple appropriation by the users, with the formal spaces on the city side on the left and the informal spaces on the park side on the right, with the boardroom, the meeting spaces, the training rooms, so that there will be a form of sensitive representation of the body. In the new headquarters, Samuel continues, you enter at the tip, in the hall, which is relatively low-ceilinged and from which you can see the street unfolding. This street is a metaphor for the forest path, with this structure, large posts that rise up on 3 levels, arranged in a somewhat random manner, the ceiling beams that are arranged in quincunxes and represent the branches of the tree, and finally this suspended ceiling made of ONF forest slabs that represent the foliage while playing an acoustic role and diffusing light. So there is nothing gratuitous about the devices we have put in place. It's not decoration, it's structure, it's comfort of use, but it also creates this metaphor, this setting from the entrance of the building. End of quote. The site on which the project is located has a triangular shape resulting from the plot of land and gives the possibility of building up to this point. The beveled parcels that form the site are characteristic of the Parisian fabric. Here, an agricultural parcel system that has changed over time, which has been cut up by major axes, the Boulevard Maréchal Leclerc and the Boulevard du Général de Gaulle, two major axes that join the Charenton Bridge and cut through this parcel system. This sharp geometry makes the building. The architects have simply sought to sublimate this point through architecture. It is a corbel that creates a somewhat formal opening onto the city. When you are in the center of the park, you can see under the trees, and the technical tour de force materialized by the cantilever allows the building to disappear. It is this architecture of effacement that is magical, because it is a very large building. You can see into the street under the trees, says Vincent Lavergne. It is a simple geometry that creates complex spaces, the radiation of important structural elements around the central axis. On the informal side, various mezzanines follow one another in tiers and create a space that is spectacularly cathedral-like, but simple to construct in terms of structure. As we are close to the metro, says Samuel, a double slab acts as a vibratory brake and the concrete core provides ballast. It is the vertical backbone on which we will lean to brace the roof and on which we will place the lattice girders of the prow that will hold the cantilever of the entrance. The beams are anchored with metal joints. Vincent points out that this is the first building of this size, 7,600 square meters, to be made of French wood. The Matisse company, together with Poutoux, is using a range of techniques specific to wood with the emphasis on species. Spruce, Douglas fir, hardwoods are used in the finishing work. The main innovation is that the building comes out of a globalized system of assembly. It questions France's capacity to organize industrial subsidiaries in order to ensure the ecological transition. It embodies the social dimension of architecture through the resource and the construction system. It allows wood to regain its contemporary dimension in architecture. Congratulations to the architects and the entire team for having stayed the course, despite the COVID period, the war in Europe, the supply problems, and the takeover of the company. Long live the figurehead of the ONF headquarters. This text was written by Anne-Charlotte based on the interview in French with the two agencies. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. Let's meet again next week for a new Comme d'Archi in English. And until then, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. Thanks to Julien Rebourg, sound engineer, who is collaborating with us today. Don't forget to tune in to our previews on Instagram at Comme d'Archi Podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, don't hesitate to promote it by giving it 5 stars and a little comment on Apple Podcast or on your favorite podcast platform. And above all, subscribe to listen to all of our episodes for free. See you soon, and until then, take care of yourself.